Welcome to the third episode of Dead Last, and this episode we're doing something a little bit differently. We've been doing franchises so far, but I thought we should try something a little bit more interesting, and we're going to be doing the Stephen King Adaptations, Volume 1. That's right, this is the first part. Now, let me tell you first what we're including here. We're actually including anything before the year 2000, and only things that are defined by Wikipedia as novels. I realize that there's probably one or two things in here that people are going to argue with me and say that's not a novel, it's a novella. But, you know, it's my show. So, that's what we're doing. Also, I've eliminated anything that is not horror related. So, if it's not horror, I didn't include it in this list. So, here is a list of the movies that we are going to be doing, categorized by the year that they were released. So what I did in order to rank these was I actually had several people, several good friends of mine, and actually my patrons on Patreon all submitted their list ranking this movie from dead last, the worst, to first, the best. Each one of those rankings gives it a score, so the movie with the lowest score is the best, and the highest score is absolutely dead last. So who's going to be helping me out here? So first of all, I've got these patrons right here that help me out. Thanks, guys. Thank you for submitting the listing and being a part of the show. And I also have some people on my panel. Some of them are going to be familiar to you, like this one right here. It's Christy, the Movie Timeline's wife. Christy, I've always told you before, is a costume designer for film and television, including the awesome blockbuster hit Stalked by My Doctor and Stalked by My Doctor 2.
And Psycho Granny is available on Hulu.
Oh, that's right. Psycho Granny on Hulu right now, which you should check out. We also have my longtime friend Mikey, who is right here with us.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Mask maker extraordinaire. You've seen a lot of his masks at the store around Halloween time. Trust me, you've seen all of them. And you've seen some of his special effects up on the big screen and the little one, including The Walking Dead.
And most of the stuff that was cut out of all the stuff you've seen, I did that too.
We also have our good friend Derek.
How are you all, everyone?
Derek is the host of Shindig Radio, which is an awesome podcast, which you've got to check out right now. And also you can go to his website, HalloweenShindig.com. There's a lot of good stuff on there to check out. Also, a lot of fun Halloween and horror-related stuff, including some cool music.
I mean, it's a music blog, so yeah, it's all music, for the most part.
And we have our newest addition to the panel. We've got my good friend Maddie up here.
How's it going, everybody? I'm glad to be here, Josh. Thanks, man. It's going to be fun.
No worries, especially because Maddie is a big, you're a big Stephen King fan, as I could tell from looking right behind you.
Yeah, I wrote him a letter when I was a kid, actually, and he wrote back to me, and he said, keep up the good work, and, you know, you'll be a writer one day. And as you can see, everything worked out great.
He was wrong.
What?
All right, so let's get on with this rankings. So here's how it breaks down. We had 11 participants in this category, and that means that the best possible score that a movie could have would be 11 points. That would be the absolute best. That would be if every single person ranked a movie number one. Also, the worst possible score that a movie could have would be 132 points, and that would be if every single member of the panel ranked it dead last. So, with that in mind, let's see which one is dead last. And that guy with a massive 117 points, a pretty low score, is Thinner. This movie was ranked dead last 4 times. The highest rank that it had was 6th place. So somebody did give it 6th place, which is a fairly high ranking. Mikey and Derek, you guys both ranked it dead last. This was your least favorite. Christy and I both ranked it 11th place, also very low on our lists. And Maddie, you gave it a 9, which is better than us, but still not a great score. There was only 2 votes, Maddie, your vote, and one other vote that was not in the double digits. Almost everybody gave this either 10, 11, or 12 consistently across the board, which is why you see it where it's at. So what about this made it so bad?
I don't know, man. That movie's got a weird vibe to it where I can't tell if it's trying to be a horror movie or a comedy, or goofy, or scary, but it's none of those things, except for goofy. It's definitely goofy. That's just I mean, it's not without its moments, but it's just not a movie I really enjoy watching. It's really goofy.
Christy, you had some choice things to say about this one.
I don't know what the heck is going on with, like, the makeup and the prosthetics and the fats. It's so bad. It's so bad. And the gypsies, like, I don't know, maybe like these people have never seen gypsies, or they're like the worst gypsies I've ever, like they're like the most like unbelievable gypsies.
I know when I think of a gypsy, the first thing that comes to my mind is the girl from Remote Control.
Carrie, you have your derboka out.
I have my derboka.
And you have your little drum out, too.
Just those things. And then the main character, I don't even remember his name. It was like, was he supposed to be an asshole? Was he supposed to be relatable? I just, like, which way were we going here? I don't know. And I just did not care about him or anybody else or the gypsies or the movie.
Mikey, you also had this ranked dead last, so you obviously did not care for most of it. What about it stuck out to you?
Unfortunately, I kind of feel bad ranking this last. Like I just couldn't argue my way into giving it any other spot though. I kept going back and forth and wrestling with this whole thing because I remember liking it when it first came out. I'm a Tom Holland fan, and going back and watching it, it is just more goofy than I thought it was kind of Tom Holland-y. It's just not an easy watch. I think there's times in my fandom where I remember images from like Fangoria and stuff more than I remember the actual film. And there's like little snapshots of different makeups that I really like in the movie, like the guy who's got the kind of lizard skin peeling off and stuff like that, which you never really barely see him in the film. And I went back and, revisited it again, and I was like, all right, well, that's not even part of the movie, really. So why am I holding on to this stuff? It's just not that good.
And I think that's part of the disappointment here is that this is Tom Holland. He's made some of the better horror movies of the 80s, and he's created some great franchise stuff. And when we look at this list, there's some heavy hitters of horror on this list.
Absolutely.
And when you say, hey, Tom Holland is doing this one, I had some pretty high expectations for it. And man, it just does not hit any of those expectations. And then I'm so terrible that I'm not going to remember his name, but Discount RoboCop just does not have the chops for that role because again, I didn't know if he was supposed to be. I don't know if I was supposed to like this guy or not like this guy. He played it up as being like a good guy, a jerk, and then also just being a complete idiot. Like sometimes he just comes off as just like oh.
And it sort of feels like he's overcompensating in the fat suit until he gets out of the fat suit and he's playing it the same way, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess that's just. You weren't just overcompensating with all this ridiculous makeup on, which definitely seems apparent, at least in the beginning of the movie, where he's just kind of larger than life jerk who you don't like.
Well, I definitely have a soft spot for this movie. There's something about it. There's a charm to it. It's like, yes, the prosthetics, you can see the scene. Again, it's kind of charming to me. Again, Tom Holland, I love him. Fright Night, Child's Play, almost everything he does, I love. And you got Joe Mantegna running around like Rambo, and he's like the most least Rambo-looking dude on the planet. And yet, I don't know, there's just something about the movie that I can watch it over and over and over again because I get a kick out of it. I mean, the gypsy looks like Buddy Hackett. I mean, it's just the weirdest group to assemble for this movie. And they're all really good actors. Like, I'm trying to figure out what they're doing.
I was saying you got to love Carrie Wurr, too. That was like a time where they just threw her in everything.
You have to love her?
In early 90s movies. She's in everything.
All right, so moving on from that, we have our dead last for this episode. But let's see what was actually very close in a number 11 spot. Only 3 points away with 114 points was Needful Things. This movie was ranked dead last 5 times, so it was ranked dead last 1 more time than Thinner was, actually. And its highest rank was only a 7. Me, Christy, and Matt all ranked Needful Things as dead last. Mikey, you gave it an 11, and Derek, you were the outlier with this one, ranking it a 9. So a little, still a pretty low ranking, but a little bit higher than us. Christy, why don't you kick us off with why you thought this one was dead last?
I don't know. I just felt like it was a sloppy movie. Like it wasn't like with everything. My pet peeve, and this is so stupid. I know this is so stupid, but like this is how nitpicky this movie made me, is when he goes downstairs and is flipping through the newspapers, the most recent is on the bottom. Why would it, how did like events of World War II get on top? Like, I just felt like it was sloppy and it wasn't a good story. I don't know. If I'm thinking about newspaper order, you've lost me.
I hate this movie. I hate it. And I have a grudge against it because when I saw it in the theater, I was so excited because the book is one of my favorite books King's ever done. Like, it has so much going on for it. One of the bullies from Stand By Me shows up in it again. So it's like old characters coming back to, you know, and it just had so much energy. There's giant spiders. There's all this cool stuff in it. And then I go to see the movie, and it's so bland and cheap. And Max von Sydow's the only thing that stands out to me. He's trying his best, but everybody else seems to be sleepwalking through it. There's no real stakes like there was in the book. I don't know. It was hard to sit through it again, honestly, because I really dislike this movie that much.
I mean, this was a pretty decently budgeted release, and it had obviously a pretty solid cast on it, but it felt like a TV movie.
But it is not a TV movie, because if you compare it to the likes of anything that Mick Garris has made out of a Stephen King story, you cannot rank Needful Things lower than those movies. Those movies are all pretty terrible. I don't mind Needful Things. I mean, I agree with Matt. The story is, it definitely gets a short shrift, but I love Max von Sydow. I just like the character of Leland Gaunt. I like what he's doing. I like that the inherent horror in Needful Things is regular people just getting pushed to turn on each other. And it's not like Thinner, where it's some kind of goofy, you know, gypsy curse that gets put on the guy who I guess is your main character and your villain. I don't really understand. Needful Things gives you a great villain. That main Stephen King atmosphere is real rich, at least more so than Thinner. It feels like a movie.
Well, oddly enough, because I feel as if that might be my issue with this, is that you actually have Max von Sydow playing the role. His whole thing was to get people to throw poop at each other. Like, I mean, it just did not seem that sinister of a villain to me. And like, as much as I don't want to say anything bad about Max von Sydow, I felt his performance was just so bland in this. I felt like this villain could have been more charismatic and should have been more charismatic, but like, I just didn't find him charming. Like, I think that the scene where he's supposed to be seducing the female lead, and it's like this weird kind of sexual tension thing, I think you're supposed to think that she's swayed by him, but it just felt creepy and comedic to me.
Holly McClane would never fall for this.
She's so hot though. It's like I just love that there's at least a movie where they really sex her up out there. Like, even for a second, I'm like, I love her. She's like the perfect mom, like total 80s mom, but smoking hot, you know? Holly McClane all day.
Moving on to number 10. This is a movie that I wasn't sure where it was going to place, because we've got one of the biggest names in horror behind the wheel, and we're talking about George Romero, and they're talking about The Dark Half with 99 points, which is, you know, fairly high. Even though it was number 10, this movie was never ranked dead last. Nobody gave it dead last, although 2 people did give it 11. And its highest rank that it got, somebody did rank it as 4th place. In terms of us, there was a lot of actually consistency here. Me, Christy, Maddie, and Derek all ranked this movie as 10th place, exactly where it sits on the list. Mikey, you actually ranked this a little higher than others with 6th place. So I'm actually going to let you kick this off by telling us what you liked about this one more than probably we did.
I mean, you already hit it with just the Romero stamp on there. You know, I love George Romero, and a lot of these things sort of hinge on the director and at least their style getting in there as much as it possibly can. I wouldn't put this up in my favorite Romero movies if we were ranking those, but it does have that kind of Romero vibe, and I like the premise. I like the story. I do like the book as well, even though, you know, it's not dead on the book, but it's close enough, at least in concept. And then you have John Vulich again, a name we keep, you know, talking about constantly because his makeup was was just the shit, you know, especially in that time, early 90s. And there's not much you can do with this character, but what he did try to do makeup-wise, I thought was really cool.
This is where I have to kind of interject and say that the interesting thing about this list for me personally is we have 12 movies here, and I did rank this movie as number 10, so it's actually pretty low on my list. But from here until number 1, these are all movies that I enjoyed. Like even though I have it ranked number 10, I actually do enjoy The Dark Half. I think it's just a matter of the other movies on this list I enjoyed more. I don't have a lot negative to say about The Dark Half, except that maybe it's probably about a good 20 minutes too long. It's really long. One of the things I thought was interesting about the movie was the way that they played it up. Christy, I think that when we were watching it, you were questioning whether or not it was just a split personality thing. If I'm not.
Yeah, because it's like the whole cheap, let's just slick their hair back and make them hold their cigarette like this gag, where it's like the evil twin. Yeah,
and they purposely did that. I think that was the point with the movie, that they were like trying to almost sell that mystery. You know, I actually liked. Let me just point out, I liked that they did that. I thought it actually worked. I don't even think that the movie knew that that's what it was doing, because when they revealed that they were two separate people, it was almost treated like no big deal. It was just kind of like, wait, you didn't know this?
So it sort of doesn't work, though, when you're trying to convince the audience that this guy is really the guy who's out there committing these murders, because why would you not just lock this dude up immediately? Michael Rooker is playing Pangborn, and he's just like, well, you know, let's see what happens. Like, no, you would lock this guy up, you'd put him in a cell, and if the murders keep happening, then you know that he's not the guy. And it's just kind of like, what? I don't understand that particular aspect of it, but
that really drove me crazy. And then like in the hallway when the police are coming up, and like, who's that guy? And he's like, I don't know. Let him go. There's just a murdered person.
To me, it's a waste. You got George Romero doing Stephen King, and your expectations are so high, and it just really, to me, this movie drags. I kind of know where it's going. You always kind of know where it's going. The effects are awesome. That's the one thing I think it does have going for it. I don't hate this movie, but it's hard for me to watch again. You know what I mean?
As a story, though, like Dark Half and the whole like Richard Bachman King thing, is pretty interesting. You know, apparently he's coming out of his alcohol addiction at this time when he's writing this, and he's dealing with his own crazy stuff. And conceptually, that's kind of interesting to think about. And those, not to mention just the makeup effects, but just the Sparrow effects and stuff. And there's some physical effects and some weird, you know, double emulsion, you know, pre-digital, cool 90s stuff that I think is pretty cool too in the movie. And I don't know, there's something about it that makes it, but it does drag in the middle. I'll give you guys that.
All right, so moving on to number 9, actually, fairly close in points, actually, is Firestarter, which is a movie I thought would actually do a little bit better on this list, but 94 points in total, was ranked dead last one time. Somebody did rank it dead last. Its highest rank it got 2 6s, and they were from me and Christy. We both ranked this one 6th. Derek, you gave this a decent rating as well with an 8. Mikey a 9, and Maddie kind of gave it on the lower end of things, 11. So Maddie, what is it about this one that stuck out? Because you did not care for this one as much.
Here's the thing about this movie. The beginning, awesome. It really builds. The middle, George C. Scott's trying to carry this thing by himself. And I love George C. Scott. Patton's one of my favorite movies. The ending, awesome. Fireballs everywhere, but getting through that middle part of this movie is tough. And you have some great actors, Louise Fletcher and Sheen, all these great people. And I'm like, give them something to do. It's like, how many times can they stick Drew Barrymore in a room and watch her like burn stuff? It's like 4 times in this freaking movie. I'm like, get on with it. Show me something. It could have been really great. I guess it's just disappointing to me.
This part of my list is confusing to me because I feel like there's so many of the movies that are like I could just move around on the list. I mean, I like it. I have a lot of nostalgia as well attached to it. It was something that I watched a lot growing up with my friends, and I don't know, I feel like we identified with it because it was a little girl, you know.
I ranked this 6, but my like 6, 7, 8, like all those, they're all really, really close. Is that ending. Like that ending with the fireballs and blowing everything up, just people flying through the air in flames, like it was such a great sequence. Although I will say that as much as I love George C. Scott, I don't know who in the casting office was like, so we've got this character, he's a Native American, who can we get? George C. Scott. That's who I think of when I think of Native Americans.
In fairness, I don't think he's going over the top with it. I think that he kind of downplays. It's
downplayed enough that I almost just wish they had eliminated the whole Native American aspect of the character.
If they weren't going to cast it a Native American, then they should have just eliminated that factor. Because in his first scene, as soon as he walks through the door, I was like, oh, okay, this was supposed to be a Native American.
I actually had a lot more fun revisiting this. It was one of the movies I never really liked. I never even come up in a conversation about, King Adaptations or anything. But I went back and watched it for this list, and I was pleasantly surprised. I had a lot of fun with it. I love George C. Scott. He's karate chopping people's faces, like killing them with karate chops. I'm like, all right, that's for me. I felt like that was directly for me. And all those physical effects, the fire effects and stuff were really cool at the end.
You got Tangerine Dream, young Drew Barrymore. It looks awesome. It feels awesome while you're watching it. So it's kind of a push and pull where you're like, I like watching this movie, but man, this isn't very good. So it kind of ended up falling by the wayside towards the end of the list. But it's super 80s. I love that soundtrack, man. It's so good.
So that takes us up to number 8. Actually, there's a pretty big jump in points here because Firestarter was 94 points at number 9, and number 8 with 72 points is Cujo. Looking at the numbers, nobody ranked this one dead last. It was not ranked dead last at all, and its lowest rank that it got was 9th place. Its highest rank it got was 3rd place. Somebody did rank it as 3rd. So out of us, I think I had this ranked the lowest. I had it ranked in 9th place. Christy, Mikey, and Derek all ranked it 7th place, which is pretty good ranking. And Matt gave it an 8th place, which is actually where it sits on the list. So right on the nose there.
I like Cujo. It shows up on my list right around the middle, but it could move around just because at certain times in my life I've liked it. Sometimes I've liked it a little less, but it's kind of fun. I just like big, crazy Saint Bernard puppets and and creature actors in Saint Bernard suits running around on set. I think that's fun. I love Dee Wallace. I think she's great. I think all the acting in this movie is top notch. That kid, he gives me chills in that one scene all the time. That crazy kind of like spinning shot inside the car. That scene's horrifying. That might be the like horror kind of climax of the whole movie, even though it's not really supposed to be. It's pretty messed up. I like the book, and I think it's close enough to the book.
I will say it's a better ending than the book. The book ending it's too much of a downer.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, if you don't know, the kid dies in the book, and it's so unnecessary.
It's a better movie ending, I'll tell you that. And it's such a perfect horror staple to do that type of ending. And it just plays out really well. I just think it's a cool movie.
I will say that when I first came up with the list of the movies, and I looked at them all on a piece of paper, I was convinced that Cujo was going to be my dead last because I did not have good memories of this movie. My memories of it were that it was dull and it was like silly and not great. And so when we rewatched it, I was actually like, this is significantly better than I remembered it being. And it is. I know I have this ranked 9th place, but again, like I was saying earlier, I still really enjoyed it. I mean, this is a pretty darn good movie. And obviously, looking at this, Maddie, you agree, and Derek agrees because we all had it ranked very similar. Maddie, how do you feel about this one?
Again, I really like this movie. I think the atmosphere is great. Like Mikey said, the performances are amazing. The little kid's great. My only problem is I think they should have kept the book's ending because it would have been an unpopular opinion at the time. But this movie would be legendary if they did. Instead, it just kind of gets lost in the wash, because the ending of the book is so shocking and heartbreaking that if they would have done that in the movie, if they would have had the balls to do it, it would be one of King's greatest films later on down the road. Maybe not at the time. I don't know. I just think the ending, I think they should have just kept it.
Cujo, to me, is a movie I actually think is better than I like it, if that makes any sense. Like, watching Cujo and trying to, like, place it with Firestarter, I'm like, this is clearly a better movie than Firestarter. It's just more skillfully crafted, I think. But just a movie to sit down and watch, I think it takes way too long for Cujo to get going. I understand what they're doing. And they're trying to make a real movie here, but I'm just like, dude, get to this dog doing something. And then the second half of the movie, yeah, they're in the car, but that's it. They're just in the car, hiding from Cujo, and that's sort of just the end of the movie. Just kind of rolls into that. Yeah, Dee Wallace is great, and the kid from is the kid from Who's the Boss?
Yeah.
He's awesome. Dee Wallace is great. I think poor Saint Bernard, they just put that goop, all over him. There's not much you could do. I feel bad for Cujo for the most part in this movie, and I know he's your villain. He's the guy you're supposed to be, scared of the whole time. But I just kind of I sort of feel bad for him.
The first time I watched Cujo was simultaneous with the first time that I saw The Exorcist, which is one of my favorite movies. But me and my friend were trying to get through The Exorcist. It actually took us, I think, 2 days. So anytime we would get too scared and have to turn it off, we would put Cujo on. That was like our comic relief. So I had memories of it just being really silly and making fun of, a lot of things going on. And we made fun of Tad a lot, which I feel bad for now that I've seen the movie in its entirety, how you're supposed to watch it, and not as, relief from like the scariest demon ever. I was pleasantly surprised that it was actually a good movie, but it just wasn't good enough to move up on my list.
We're moving on to the number 7 spot now, which is actually a movie that I hadn't seen probably since the 80s. So I was really looking forward to rewatching it, and it's Silver Bullet. It was also never ranked dead last, and its lowest rank that it got was a 9, and the highest rank it got was 4th place, which both Mikey and Derek ranked it in 4th place. I gave it 7th place, Christy gave it 5th, and Maddie also gave it 5th place. This one thing to point out, that this movie was never ranked in the double digits. Every single rating it got was single digits.
Good. It should.
I do have one big beef with Silver Bullet, and it's a minor storytelling beef. And it's the beginning of this movie is kind of a mystery of who is it? Who's the werewolf? And then you have this dream sequence where you discover that it's the priest. It's like, hey, the priest is, I guess, the werewolf because he's having dreams about werewolves. And why would he be having dreams about werewolf as he wasn't the werewolf? And then later on, you have this moment where the kid, Corey Haim, shoots out his eyeball, and then they have to go look around town to find who it is, and they have the big reveal that the priest he has a patch on his eye, and he's the werewolf. And it's so weird because they treat that like that's the big revelation, like it's actually the priest. And if they would have cut out that dream sequence, that actually would have been like a huge like whoa. And instead, it's just like yeah, we know.
I love Silver Bullet. I mean, it's a great werewolf. You got Gary Busey being firing on all cylinders, crazy Gary Busey. You got Corey Haim is great. He gives him a rocket-powered wheelchair called the Silver Bullet. He fires a firecracker at his face. The werewolf uses a baseball bat to beat people down instead of ripping them apart with his werewolf claws, which I love. The end where, they're all tucked up in the house and the werewolf's trying to... I love it. I love Silver Bullet. It's one of my favorite.
I have memories of it. I think it might have been an Up All Night movie. But I feel like it was something that was on late on Fridays and Saturdays a lot when I was growing up and having sleepovers and stuff. And I always remembered it as something we made fun of, but I did not remember how just absolutely enjoyable it is.
It's one of those movies I grew up with. Like I think everybody here did. It's one of those movies you always saw. And it's always fun. And, Corey Haim's giving it all he's got. And yeah, the werewolf reveal, we all knew it was the priest, you know, but it's forgivable. I don't know, there's something about, you know, the way Gary Busey's acting, like the crazy drunk uncle. It's the role he was born to play. I don't know, I think they did a great job with the material given, and the acting's fun. And yeah, I love this movie too. I got to agree with Derek and pretty much everybody. I love it.
That movie, to me, also, it kind of introduced me to Stephen King, because this was this fun werewolf movie, and I was so excited about werewolf movies. When I found out that it was a Stephen King book, I went to go check it out, and I was kind of nervous about it. I don't know if I can do the whole novel thing. I'm a young kid. I don't know. And here it is. It's basically a comic book. I'm like, holy shit. This is a short little book, and it's got all this badass Bernie Wrightson paintings in it. This was my perfect introduction to Stephen King as an author. And I love that book, and I've always loved Silver Bullet for those same reasons, and I think it's great. And as far as werewolf movies at that time, American Werewolf, Howling, you know, Wolfen, and Silver Bullet, I feel like there's like that's your kind of werewolf starter kit as an 80s kid, you know.
Well, then that takes us up to the top half of the list now, with number 6. Number 6 is the most controversial movie on this list, and I'll explain why, I guess, because, man, some crazy rankings for this, but with 66 points, it's Pet Sematary. Again, another decent jump from 71 points down to 66 points. Again, it was never ranked dead last. Nobody gave this dead last. And its lowest ranking was 11th place, and its highest ranking was first place. One person did actually rank it as their favorite of these movies. I ranked it 8th place. Christy, you ranked it a little lower at 9th place. Derek, 6th place. Mikey, much higher, 2nd place. And Matt, 3rd place. Here's something interesting about this movie. So this movie's rankings were all over the place. Here's the rankings that this movie had. 1st place, 2nd place, 3rd place, 5th place, 6th place, 8th place, 9th place, 10th place, and 11th place.
That's crazy.
So obviously opinions of this movie are just all over the place. I know for me it's kind of funny because I've never liked Pet Sematary. Like, I did not like it when I was younger. It was always, to me, this movie that I think that had this like weird place as a loved horror movie that I just never got. The lead, his performance just sinks the entire movie for me because he's so bland. And I feel like when I'm watching a movie about a guy that loses his kid, I should feel for him more, and I guess I just didn't have that connection, and this movie never connected it for me, but it does have so many great little moments to love, which on rewatching, those stood out as being like a lot more memorable to me, but the plot not so much.
You have this cast that I think does a great job, considering they're all TV actors. None of them are any like huge A-listers or anything like that. Even Fred Gwynne is more of a TV guy. But they all do a great job, I think. Even the lead guy, who's Louis Creed, I don't know the actor's name either, which I wish I should, because I think that, and I don't know if it's his performance or just the way it's directed and edited, but that scene where he's screaming no after Gage gets hit, and they kind of do the snapshots of him as a kid and those memories. I think that's perfect filmmaking in my view of this movie. I think it really hits hard and it's gnarly, and the makeup effects are some of my favorites. Zelda as a character was horrifying to me as a kid, and even today I think it still holds up. And I love those effects. And even I worked for Lance Anderson and Dave Anderson, who did the effects, and I was blown away to seeing the Fred Gwynne head and stuff like that. And they even gifted me this, because I'm such a Pet Sematary fan, which is a screen-used Pascal head from the movie. It's still got goo and blood still stuck on it and hair, and they just knew I was such a big fan. They didn't really understand why I was such a big fan. But, they gave me that as a gift, so I thought that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I really do love this movie. I think that it has great, just dreamlike qualities to it. It's like the biggest nightmare you could have. Like, even King's wife, she read it and was so mad at him. I don't think she talked to him for like a week because the death of the child is some of the most heartbreaking things you could talk about, But just, I remember a vivid memory where I was watching this movie alone for the first time in my house. Zelda came on screen and she ran at the the screen, like at the end when she's like, I'll twist your back and all that. I remember getting out of my chair and running behind the chair like she was going to come out of the TV. I never had that reaction to a horror movie before. It's just one of my favorite books of his and probably one of my favorite movies of his as well.
Josh pressed me for why I didn't like it. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what it is. And after, really thinking about it, it was, I did not connect to the family and the child's death. And I mean, losing a child is my absolute biggest, I could completely break down sobbing right now. And any moment, just even thinking of the possibility of that. So that's something that always hits me really hard. But I feel like by the time Gage gets hit, I'm not mortified. And I feel like I should have been at the place where I'm like, you pick him up with his one shoe and you take him and you bury him in that place. Like, I should have been like, I should have felt that motivation of I would do anything to get my child back. But there was just a disconnect with the acting and the writing, and without having that family drama connection to it, all the horror meant nothing to me.
I like Pet Sematary, but I don't like it as much as some of the movies ahead of it, or as little as some of the movies below it. It's an enjoyable little horror romp from the late 80s that has some style to spare. I mean, that Ramones song is great. I think it should get points just for that song.
So that takes us up to number 5. Again, very close in the points with 59 points is The Dead Zone. This movie was pretty well loved on this list, I guess. It was never ranked dead last. The lowest rank it got was somebody did give it an 11, although it was ranked number 1 twice. So 2 people did rank this as number 1. Me and Mikey both gave it 5s, pretty high rankings. Christy, I think, gave this the lowest rating out of us. She gave it an 8. Derek gave it the highest out of us with 3rd place, and Matt a 6th place, so right around where it is. So obviously we all kind of liked it, but none of us loved it, except maybe Derek with 3rd place liked this a little bit more than other ones. So what about this one was it that stuck out to you as being awesome?
Christopher Walken, and this is a quintessential Christopher Walken performance. Plus, you got Cronenberg. I'm a huge Cronenberg fan. And I think Cronenberg does a great job of just sort of establishing a really weird vibe in The Dead Zone. It's a movie that I kind of feel uneasy watching. What's going on is kind of weird. It's sort of episodic. So it does sort of feel a little chopped up, but it's a movie I've loved for years. And it's not one of my favorite Cronenbergs, but I think in terms of being a Stephen King adaptation, I think it's a quality movie, and it's fun to watch.
I completely forgot that this was David Cronenberg. I think this felt more Stephen King than it felt David Cronenberg. Like, a lot of his little trademark things, I think, were absent. He did a great job with it. I very much enjoyed this movie. I think it's a little slow, but it's not boring. It's just nicely paced.
I wish they would have spent more time with Martin Sheen's character. Honestly, I don't think they spent enough time building that character up. I think in the book they spent a lot more time with him. But yeah, Christopher Walken's always fun to watch. Cronenberg, the only part of that movie that I could tell he really had a spot in was the reveal of the scissors in that dude's face. That's definitely Cronenberg, because that just gets under your skin. It's like, oh, all right, scissors, in the mouth. Like, why did he choose that way to kill himself, right?
It's just crazy to me that Christopher Walken has always looked like Christopher Walken. Because in the first scene, I was like, even when he was younger, it's just looking like somebody was trying to make Christopher Walken look younger. And then it goes flash forward, and I was like, oh, because he looks like Christopher Walken does right now.
Dead Zone, for me personally, was one of the more interesting movies because it's one of the only ones where I read the book first. I started getting really into King, and then I read Dead Zone, and I had never even seen the movie. And I wasn't aware till right when I was about to check it out that it was a David Cronenberg thing, and that kind of blew my mind. I think there's a lot of hard things to do, especially the climax of this movie. How do you do that? How do you build that kind of tension when you don't have, hundreds of pages of character development, to get you to that point emotionally? And he does it, and it's all because he's a solid director and does such a great job. Again, not all the great things I love about Cronenberg as a director. Like that, I'd rather go watch some of his other stuff, like The Brood or Videodrome or whatever. But at the end of the day, It's a great adaptation. It's a fun movie. It's Cronenberg. It's Stephen King, and I love it.
Oddly enough, this feels more like a Cronenberg movie from today than it did from the early 80s.
From today.
I want to know at what point in reality is it okay to cheat on your husband while your kid is in the opposite room? Is it because like your first love was in a coma for 5 years? Is that makes that okay? I don't think there's any situation where it's okay to do that.
No, she's definitely not. She's definitely not the best of characters, like morally.
What did you want her to do? He's in a coma for 5 years. She's got to live her life. For all she knows, Johnny's going to die. But then when he's not dead, she goes, "Oh man!" And he thinks it's yesterday. You know what I mean?
No, I definitely.
Up and he's like, "What? You pulled my whole life out from under me." So I get it. I'm not going to condemn her, and to hell with you, Mikey, for condemning her like that.
Well,
I don't think she's a bad person at all.
I'm not going to fault her for moving on with her life and having the kid, but maybe just don't like bang the dude in your house.
The ice, it's gonna break.
Speaking of ice is a big part of our number 4 movie. Number 4 with 55 points is Misery. This movie was never ranked dead last. Nobody ranked there. Its lowest rank on the list was 11th place, which was Derek. Me, Christy, and Matt all unanimously gave this movie 4th place, which is where it ended up on the list. Mikey ranked this as 8th place. I want to point out that only 2 people ranked this movie lower than a 6, and I'm looking at 2 of them right there, Mikey and Derek. You guys are the only guys that ranked this lower than 6th place.
Listen, I at various points making this list, because we've talked about it, you know, I'm moving stuff around, and at one point I had it much higher on my list, and because it's Misery, right? It's one of the only ones, if not the only one, to ever win an Academy Award. How could you possibly rank this so low? And I think I was like, you know what? I'm just putting it up there based on everybody else's reaction to Misery. So if I'm going to be honest with myself, I'm ranking it on the bottom, not dead last, but it's just not a movie I want to watch. Take Kathy Bates out of this film, it falls apart entirely, and I don't like Misery.
It's one of those few that's actually better than the book, in my opinion. Like the book, they spend a lot of time on the romance novel. Like a lot of chapters are based pretty much on the romance novels. This, they adds more of the sheriff. It moves really well. The book kind of is a slog a little bit. But yeah, Kathy Bates brings it. James Caan, I love him. I don't know, the first time I saw it, it was like on the edge of your seat stuff. And yeah, I really thought it was well done, and she deserved the Oscar. Yeah, I love Misery. I think it's a great adaptation.
I understand 100% what a quality movie it is and a quality adaptation, because I'd rather watch that movie than dive into that book again. But I think the cast is great. It's a very isolated feeling movie. It does what it's supposed to do. It's directed well. There's almost nothing wrong with the movie other than I just would rather watch some of these other movies more.
This is not high on my rewatch list, but it does get points because Kathy Bates, her performance is really amazing. And I also give it extra points because I'm always impressed with movies that can keep you entertained with basically just one location.
And yet I don't feel the isolation in it. I really don't. I don't get a sense of claustrophobia from it. I don't feel like they're that far away from what's going on. I just feel like everybody's terrible at their job. And finding this guy is just something they're not trying to do that hard.
I feel like that, like them being that close is like the frustration of the movie.
I just want to take one split second to commend Rob Reiner. Clearly this guy makes great movies, and one thing I want to say that he did in this that was great, because yes, he got a great performance out of Kathy Bates, but getting a good performance out of Kathy Bates is, I don't think it's that tough. Kathy Bates is pretty freaking great. But he made me actually give a damn about James Caan. Like if you put James Caan in a movie and I'm rooting for him to die first. So it's like the fact that I kind of wanted to see him get away and win. I think I'll give that all credit to Rob Reiner.
Sorry, everybody. I just don't like Misery that much.
Well, pretty soon on this list, I'm going to make you feel a lot better because...
Oh, yeah, I'm aware.
Yes.
Yeah. You'll be fine. No one will hate you as much as they hate me.
We're going to move on to the top three. We're getting right up to the top now. Third place, 47 points, John Carpenter's Christine. I think third place is a really good spot for it to be at here. I mean, although I want to say it was ranked dead last one time. Highest ranking it had was first place. This was the only movie on the list to be both ranked best and dead last. I ranked it second place. Christy and Mikey, you guys both ranked it third place. Derek, you ranked it fifth place. Maddie, you had the lowest score on this list, seventh place out of us. Is it just that you didn't like this one, or you like the other ones more?
Like, there's a lot of stuff to love about Christine. The effects are really fun. I love when the car, comes back to life and it starts putting itself back together. It's got a lot of good acting, and I love the kid from Back to School. Just seeing him in something else is kind of fun for me. It's just, to me, they didn't really have any explanation as to why the car was this way. It just was, and it's in love with this kid, and it just kind of, I don't know, it doesn't really, for me, have any solid story to it.
I mistakenly thought this was one of your favorites, honestly. I don't know if it had to do with the soundtrack or whatever, but I just thought this was like a Mastrella movie.
I do love the soundtrack. I don't know, it didn't really...
Just came in the mail today, right before I sat down. I want to like Christine more than I do. I ranked it, 5? And I get it. He was pulling back after The Thing, but I do like the atmosphere that he creates in Christine. I think it's a great 80s movie. It's very quotable. I think it has lots of rewatch value. I think, like you're saying, the car effects are awesome.
My biggest thing about this movie, and when we look at this list in general, there's a lot of Stephen King on this list, and then there's a lot of the directors in this list. And I think that this movie is the one that actually merges the director and Stephen King the best, because Christine felt equal parts Stephen King and John Carpenter movie, because it feels very much like a John Carpenter movie to me. And it just mixes those two so perfectly in my eyes.
On these movies, I don't talk a lot about costuming, but I really, really was pleasantly surprised on the costuming in this movie, knowing the story of it. After he bought the car, I expected him to walk out, kind of like the Dark Half thing with the slicked back hair and like flicking cigarettes, and all of a sudden he's just like this badass. But it's a very gradual. But they put pops of red into his wardrobe, and the red becomes more distinct as, the car takes over him. And, I just appreciate little details like that.
I've never read Christine, unfortunately. I'd love to. But when I read other Stephen King books, I sort of see the Christine world of Stephen King when I think about it. And to do a movie about a car being your main monster in your horror film, it's got to be really hard. And I know other movies have tried to do it. Stephen King even sort of tried to do it himself, with Maximum Overdrive. I don't know.
Not on this list.
Yeah, the only one that's ever done it correctly and made it, cool and stylish and creepy is Christine, and it's because John Carpenter's the shit. And that might have a lot to do with his score. I'm not really sure, but it feels just perfect for me.
So that takes us to number 2. This one's crazy, because the entire time that we're doing his list, this movie was number 1. It looked as if there was going to be no chance that this movie was not going to be in first place. And then I got one list in particular, and that one list took it all the way down to number 2. So let's talk about Carrie. Carrie received 33 points in total. No one ranked this movie dead last. One person ranked this movie in 10th place, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Only one person out of everyone who gave a list ranked this movie above 3rd place. Although only one person ranked it as first place. It was almost unanimously 2s and 3s. 2s, 3s, 2, 3, 2, 3 across the board. I gave it a 3. Christy, Derek, and Matt all gave it 2. And Mikey gave it a 10.
I knew this was going to be a big issue. Obviously, I didn't want to cause any problems, but I had to be honest, a lot like, Derek's Misery ranking. There's nothing real wrong with it other than the fact that I'm not interested. I don't care about Carrie. I don't care about anyone in this movie. And I'm not afraid or even tense during the entire film. And of course, it's got an incredible climax. The things directed really well. It's just at the end of the day, I'm just like, I don't care about any of this, and I don't really like Carrie. I'm sorry to tell you, but like, there's more people in other movies that have been bullied that I feel worse for. There's even more people in other Stephen King adaptations I feel worse for than I do Carrie. Just not a likable character to me.
No, I think the whole movie is completely traumatizing, as high school was, you know? I mean, like, I do feel like it has a timeless quality of what it felt like to be in high school and to go through things like that. You know, I mean, everybody's experienced some version of bullying. And at the same time, she's living in this abusive household. I think they did such a good job of showing the extent of the abuse in just when she comes home and she makes her go into the little cabinet room and, you know, makes dinner and does things. And, like, I don't know how many hours have passed. And Carrie just comes out and she's like, hey, Mom, I'm going to bed. I'm tired. And the mom's like, okay, see you in the morning. And, like, that is abuse, that it becomes so normal that, you know, you don't come busting out of the closet like, you know, what the hell, you know, like, it's just, this is an everyday occurrence to us. I get locked into a closet with a Jesus that glows, you know. I mean, that is what makes Carrie a relatable character. Not relatable. I don't none of this stuff has happened to me.
I got stuffed into a closet with a glowing Jesus too.
Well, the great thing about this movie is the build. Like, you see Carrie gain confidence slowly, super slowly throughout the entire film till, you know, she's at the prom and her confidence is at its crest. She's like, she's made it. And it all comes crashing down in like a matter of seconds. So it's just really gut-wrenching like that, because you see her becoming a woman and you kind of fall in love with her throughout the course of the entire movie. Like, you're like, at first you feel sorry for her, and then she starts, you know, coming into her own, and you start being like, wow, she's really kind of attractive in a way. And then to see it just all get shattered, and you really feel for her. And you're like, yes, get these guys. You know, you kind of root for her at the end, like, yeah, let's do this. Let's burn the whole place down.
I love De Palma, especially early De Palma, and this movie is so late 70s and so De Palma and so stylized that I just love it. I love watching it. I love being in that world, you know, for a little bit of time. And a lot of making a movie, it's such a collaborative effort where you create this atmosphere. And it's really make or break it with me. And I feel like Christine does a great job with it. Dead Zone does a great job of it, where you feel like you're somewhere. And Carrie's a place that I want to be for an hour and a half. I just love the way it looks. I love the way it feels.
I just thought it was such a well-told story, and I guess that I feel as if the message of the movie and the storyline is more relevant today than I think it's kind of ever been. So maybe I connected with it a little bit more than I thought I would have. Also, possibly the fact of having a daughter and not wanting her to have to go through crap like that, and hoping that she can move stuff with her mind to kill people that mess with her. Kind of, I guess, cross my fingers that that's a thing.
I will say that I can relate. I didn't have a prayer closet, but when I see that prayer closet, I recognize that that's Saint Sebastian and not Jesus. Which is,
I know, with all the arrows in them. It's weird.
Yeah, I was you know, tortured, you know, enough as a child to know my saints, and that's, you know, abuse in itself, I think.
I was not aware. Thank you.
All right, so we'll now move on to the big number one. By process of elimination, I think we all kind of know what it's going to be. And at 31 points, only 2 points higher than Carrie, is The Shining. This movie was never ranked dead last. Its lowest ranking was 8th place. Although it was ranked number 1 6 times. All of us ranked it number 1. All of us. I will say that if I were ranking this list on how much of a good Stephen King adaptation it was, I would rank this lower. But yeah.
Thank God it's not more like the book.
I know. And thank God it's not more like that Mick Garris adaptation.
I removed our framed picture from the living room to show my love for The Shining.
What was there before?
A bird.
Just leave the Shining picture there.
No, I mean, I remember the first time I watched The Shining, the second time I watched The Shining, and the third time I watched My Shining, and just, you have to accept the fact that this is like very close to a perfect movie. This is what it looks like when every single part of production is just on fire. I mean, from acting, casting, I am so proud of the people that made this movie. I would give them a hug, even during COVID, and say thank you.
I don't know how you rank anything other than The Shining #1. This is clearly the best film that's been made out of a Stephen King movie. Whether or not it's a accurate, retelling of that story or not, I don't know. You can't mess with this movie.
It's one of my favorite movies. I love the atmosphere, the sense of isolation. Jack Nicholson's just got it cranked to 11. Real quick, let me show you something.
If he comes back with an axe, we'll freak out.
My wife did a drawing of our dog as Jack Nicholson from
Oh my God!
How much I absolutely love this movie. It's perfect. Like you were saying, it really is a perfect film, and it takes you somewhere. When you watch it, you're at the Overlook Hotel. You are sucked in. I can watch this movie 10 times, and I'm there. I'm in that room. To the point where if I'm upset about something, Ayumi will offer to make me a sandwich, just like Wendy in The Shining. Like, you want a sandwich, hon?
I would rank it up there, though, as just a perfect film. Like, if in my favorite top 5, maybe top 3 of all time, just films. And it's all testament to Kubrick. I love the book, The Shining, actually. I don't have any real problems with it. And the only thing that I can think that would make Stephen King better is through the colored glass filter of Stanley Kubrick, and that's what you're getting. And I think it enhances the concepts and the themes of the book even better than the book. And the Descent into Madness. I have nothing bad at all to say about it. And it actually makes me feel a lot better about my Carrie ranking, because I feel like I'm responsible for knocking her out of the top spot. So
you are.
Welcome.
So there you have it. It's 12 movies ranked from dead last up to first. Let's recap where they all stand. In dead last with 117 points was Thinner. At 11th place with 114 points is Needful Things. In 10th place with 99 points is The Dark Half. 9th place, Firestarter takes in 94 points. In 8th place, Cujo takes 72 points. 7th place, just 1 point away with 71 points, is Silver Bullet. 6th place, Pet Sematary with 66 points. 5th place, The Dead Zone ranks up 59 points. Dropping down to 4th place was Misery with 55 points. Christine takes 3rd place with 47 points. Carrie sneaks in 33 points for number 2, but The Shining with 31 points slips right past it into top spot. So there we have the list. If you agree or disagree with any of these, you've got to let us know down in the comments. If you want to call anybody out on their picks, like Mikey's 10th ranking for Carrie, go ahead and let him know how you feel down there. Hey, we like to hear this. If you want to participate in the rankings, all you've got to do is become a patron on patreon.com. Go to patreon.com/movie timelines and become a patron. The patrons get to hand in their lists. We do this. This is a monthly series, so every month we'll do a different set of rankings. And it's been a lot of fun. I thank you for you guys for coming on to the show here and doing this.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So, and hopefully you'll be back for some more, and maybe we'll just increase the panel even more, and we'll have like 30 people's pictures up on there. And
it look like a Brady Bunch.
Yeah, exactly. In the meantime, you can go to patreon.com. Thank these guys over here, the patrons for the channel. They do help, even if they haven't given us a list. These guys over here have helped keep this channel going. You can get some official Dead Last merchandise. I got a cool T-shirt. You can go over to the store and pick that up as well. And yeah, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and then we'll see you in a little while for another great video. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.